Let me take you to the conflict in Syria now, where we have seen, again, a tremendous number of people killed as the conflict has gone on. And we reported recently on the treatment of refugees trying to leave Syria and go into Jordan. I think we can have a look at some of Jonathan Miller's images that he brought back very recently of people apparently being shot at by Syrian forces as they tried to flee the country. What's your reaction to that?
Well, as you know, we service the commissions of inquiry that are gathering the information. This commission is actually going to release their report, their most recent report, on Monday. It will be launched. We ourselves observe and monitor the situation. I addressed the Security Council on protection of civilians a few days ago, last week, and came up again with this figure of 60,000 killed. We don't know under what circumstances, but that's a very shocking figure from the start of the conflict in Syria. And I said this figure is now 70,000 because the killings have been ongoing. Whenever we have reported on Syria, the Syrian government has come back to us with documentation and statements that they are only firing upon armed rebels. And what this footage clearly indicates that the firing is upon civilians, refugees fleeing from fear and destruction of their homes. So once again, I appreciate this kind of visual and actual evidence of what is going on. My colleague Valerie Amos has the challenge of humanitarian assistance, and the High Commissioner for Refugees is also right there in Jordan receiving these vast numbers of people fleeing for safety.
Isn't the trouble, though, that for the UN, that these sorts of things go on periodically in modern history? It's going on right now. We have this organization called the United Nations, people like you, and you don't seem to have the power to achieve very much in these conflicts beyond talking about it, issuing reports, issuing statements. I mean, are you ultimately a very weak organization?
Well, the United Nations is an intergovernmental body. The decisions are made by governments. My job, and as the Secretary General himself, has been consistently urging members of the United Nations to get together, because this is why the United Nations was set up, just to address crisis situations, to prevent crisis, to prevent loss of lives. And once again, I reminded the Security Council, you are the highest body. You have to try and reach consensus, overcome differences or national or other interests, and put the civilians of Syria at the forefront here.
But aren't these conflicts inevitably solved by individual members or groups of members of the UN taking action themselves, often not explicitly with UN approval? I mean, you know, and that shows that the UN system is not really working, isn't it?
Well, where governments manifestly fail to protect their civilians, then the United Nations does intervene. It's true, they first examine the situation. That's why they need me to report the facts on the ground. And they do take action. The Human Rights Council has had very many urgent sessions on Syria. They have not ignored the situation. There are some good examples where the United Nations efforts have succeeded. One would be in Guinea, and in the past, ending apartheid, helping us in South Africa to achieve democracy. These are intergovernmental efforts in the United Nations.
But do you see it as part of your job at all to argue the case for military intervention on behalf of human rights?
Well, I'm not arguing for any specific intervention. I'm saying that the Security Council has a toolbox which they have used, different measures and mechanisms they have used in the past, such as peacekeeping forces to keep warring sides apart while negotiations are going on. The sole purpose of that is to protect civilians. So they have all these tools and mechanisms that they could use. I'm calling on them, so is the Secretary General very strongly, calling for protective action immediately.
But would it be wrong to launch military action against the Assad regime? That's different to sending peacekeeping forces.
Yeah, well, that's not for me to say. It's, for me, the protection of civilians is more important.
Why is it not for you to say?
It's not for me to say what kind of action. And normally we say it's for Syrians to determine what kind of intervention they would like. And I know that because of the military intervention in Libya, members of the Security Council are much more cautious about military intervention, because the intervention may continue and become a regime change, and so acting out the interests of one or other governments. This is what I'm hearing in the Security Council.
But what other legal action could you take against President Assad? Should he be being actively investigated for war crimes or crimes against humanity right now? Is he being?
He's not, but he should be. This is my strong call, which I've made like 18 months ago, based on the evidence. I said crimes against humanity and serious war crimes are being committed by President Assad's forces, his security forces, and other groups allied to him.
So why is he not?
That he is responsible, and there should be a referral by the Security Council to the International Criminal Court.
And that's the only mechanism that would trigger it, is it?
Yes.
Because it would seem astonishing to most people that the UN Commissioner for Human Rights can say he should be investigated, and it doesn't happen.
Well, I think that it's a very serious call that I make. It's not something we just make. It's based on the evidence. We had this evidence almost 18 months ago. The situation has deteriorated catastrophically. It's now become an ethnic conflict as well. Many more parties involved. The Syrian government, and I think they're right here, are saying that terrorist groups have come into the picture on the side of the rebels. So the situation has really deteriorated from the time it started, at which point it was demonstrators demanding their human rights.
And so how would you describe what he is doing to his people?
I would describe it as evidence of crimes against humanity and war crimes against his own people. And I would say it's a manifest failure of the obligation of a sovereign, which is to protect your citizens. And that's would be the opening for international intervention of whatever kind.
Is the trouble that after Iraq and Afghanistan, it is very, very difficult to intervene in a place like Syria? Is Syria the legacy of a controversial and failed intervention in Iraq?
Well, as I said, it's an intergovernmental decision on what kind of action, intervention, peacekeeping, military intervention, or a referral to the International Criminal Court. We urge that action be taken immediately. If there is doubt and hesitation, it's because people are assessing the value of military intervention in places like Libya, Syria, and Afghanistan. That it could become a long, drawn-out war with no guarantees that civilians will not be harmed in that process.